respect to Southland's issues, Mr Speaker.
The next call is a split call. Jan Logie, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to take a call on this, the third reading of the Immigration Amendment Bill number 2, which the Greens are very disappointed not to be able to support. As been previously mentioned by my colleague Denise Roach, that we see this as one step forward, but sadly also 2 steps backwards. It's critically important that we have provisions in law that protect legal migrant workers from exploitation, and this bill enables that to happen. It is critically important that we have functioning sanctions against employers who are exploiting migrant workers, and this bill provides for up to 7 years imprisonment and up to or $100,000 fine, up to $100,000 fine. That's really important because as we've heard from the previous National Party speaker, that some employers may benefit up to $20,000 a year through the exploitation of migrant workers. So minimal economic sanctions, as a case in the law at the moment, won't pay off. They're not going to be in balance from the gain that they can make from exploiting workers. So those provisions are really important. However, and we listen to the basic conditions to enable those sanctions to be put in place aren't in this bill. And we know that the Migrant Workers Union were encouraging the government to bring this legislation, and we supported it at first reading. And in fact, the union were saying we shouldn't have to wait too long. This is too important. The exploitation that's happening is terrible. And we've heard across the House tonight some terrible stories of exploitation, and we all know those stories. And so this bill is really important, and we really, really wanted to support it. But as we were going through the legislation and through the select committee stages, we were starting to get more and more concerned at what was being raised. So we went back to the union and said, okay, this is what's in this bill. Can you support this? Do you support this? Do you want us to support this? And their answer was no. So if the union that is representing the workers, the people who have most access to their experience to be able to inform good lawmaking, are saying that this bill is counterproductive, then actually this House needs to listen to that, because none of us have access to the experience that they do. And we need to listen to that, and they're telling us that for this to work, there needs to be visa protection for those workers. And I hear that the government's bringing in directions for immigration to enable them to overlook breaches to visas for workers, to enable them to make complaints. But that's a discretionary provision. If workers can't be guaranteed that their visas are protected, they're not going to come forward. If they're risking deportation, they're not going to come forward. And we know we don't have enough labour inspectors to actually be able to detect migrant exploitation without the workers coming forward. We don't have a system to be able to do it. So we're reliant on the workers coming forward. And this bill disincentivises those workers from coming forward. So then what are we left with? Actually, we're left with window dressing on the core provision. And then we've got extended search warrant powers into domestic homes, or powers of search without warrants. And I want to give credit for ACT for extending and ensuring that there's some accountability around the use of that. But still, it is without warrant search powers into people's homes when we have a history of dawn raids in this country. And those powers are being given to immigration rather than Labour. We're told by the Minister, well, that's because this is an immigration bill. Not to be flippant. That is flippant when we have a history of immigration going into Pacific people's homes to deport families in this country, and the racist abuse of the immigration system. We need protections against that, and this bill actually gives disproportionate power to the government, and we should be very worried about it.
I call David Seymour.